So we'll move on then to A Room for Romeo Brass. True?
Yes. So in, naturally, the Midlands, 12-year-old Romeo Brass, Andrew Shim, lives with his mum and sister and spends most of his time with his next-door neighbour and best friend Knox, Ben Marshall. Things rub along pretty normally for Romeo for the bulk of the time, with his biggest issue being accused of eating the chips he was supposed to bring home for the chippy for his mum and sister. A slanderous charge, of course, and countered only by the fact he didn't eat all of the chips, just most of them. Two things occur, though, which in various ways upset Romeo's life. His absent father, Frank Harper, returns seeking a relationship with him, something in which Romeo is interested in having absolutely no part, and he begins a friendship of sorts with Paddy Considine's Morel, a strange man more than twice Romeo's age, though he's not strange in a way that might immediately make you think. Morel takes on Romeo as something of a protege. It's not hard to imagine him seeing himself as something of a sort of Mr. Miyagi, and something of a friend. He appears to have no others, as well as a go-between between seeing Romeo as a means to begin a relationship with his attractive older sister Ladine, played by Vicky McClure, to whom Morel has taken a fancy. Morel's unhealthy presence creates a distance between Romeo and Knox, especially when Knox becomes bedbound after spinal surgery, leaving Knox perfecting magic tricks alone in his bedroom, and Romeo being trained as some sort of ninja? At least in Morel's mind, I guess. The strange undercurrent that follows the at first pathetic but likeable, but later capricious Morel surges to the surface after his date with Ladine ends poorly, and suddenly things take a darker, violent and more sinister turn as he takes out his humiliation on a number of innocents. While I really quite enjoyed A Room for Romeo Brass, it is a film of two difficult to reconcile parts. The two kids are great, and their awkward yet also effortless on-again, off-again friendship feels very natural and real. And their drifting apart and then back together again is entirely believable, and didn't need the catalyst of an outside influence to ring true. Paddy Considine, in his film debut, is also really good, albeit that he seems he doesn't quite have his acting skills completely honed and dialed in yet. There's humour, threat, and even a little pathos in Considine's performance, even if Morel's description of the physical abuse he received at the hands of his father feels like a not overly sophisticated attempt by the writers, Paul Fraser and Shane Meadows, to explain his character. I just don't get why both of these things, the childhood friendship and the violent, perhaps mentally or emotionally disabled outsider, are in the same film. If Meadows is trying to say something, then he's doing so in ways I'm failing to interpret, but I did still enjoy it. I wish I had more answers to the questions the film leaves me with.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this. Again, not one I'd seen before, and I really enjoyed it, but I don't really disagree with anything you're saying there. It does feel like it's two paths of a film that have been smashed together. Like, a lot of it feels like some kind of nice little charming coming of age, young adult adventure with the two friends getting on, and then there's like literally one moment where Barry Constantine goes from like kind of weird but okay to all out evil, and one scene is like, oh, this is now a very different film, and I was on board with it, and I wanted to see where it was going. But I think, like yourself, Drew, I'm not quite sure I actually had a destination in mind. It's still fun to be along for the ride, but quite what it was supposed to be saying about anything of it, or about Paddy Constantine's character or situation or anything else, is maybe a bit of a mystery to me. So whether it had any kind of greater point, if you will, I'm not quite sure. But just in terms of just having a bunch of interesting characters bouncing off each other, which, to be honest, is what I like in most of Meadows' films, it delivers on that scale. And I think Constantine as a really strong debut performance. It makes for a very compelling character and a compelling watch. Like I say, maybe not like yourself, not so sold on it having a greater point, or if it knew what it was trying to say about that kind of those characters or their actions. But in terms of just being an interesting film, definitely delivers on that front.
Yeah, that's I had also not seen this one, for this episode. Again, I don't know why that is. I'm strange like that. I really, really like Shane Meadows, so didn't want to watch all of his work.
Yeah.
Saving it up for something, I don't know.
Seems
I
legit.
even took the cellophane off of a DVD for this one. Yeah, but I did enjoy it. It's like I was enjoying two different films that were happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't quite get what the point of that is. That's it, like the friendship between the two boys, like that felt so real. They're really good actors. They really seem to have a knack for finding sort of non-actors and getting great performances out of them.
Yeah.
We're going to come in a couple of films' time to probably the absolute zenith of that in terms of Thomas Turgis. But Andrew Shim's great, and he's gone on to be in a few more of Shane Meadows' films since then. But they feel very natural, and the relation. Again, this is another one based on his real experiences. Shane Meadows lived next door to his co-writer Paul Fraser, who was bedbound for several months with a back injury or something at some point. So it's like he's basing on real stuff. That kind of comes through. I feel it feels real, and just the way these two kids are sort of. I don't know, it's almost like some sort of embarrassment goes with them, like out of nothing, because that sort of thing happens when you're a teenager, you're an idiot. It comes with the territory. And it's kind of like not things don't necessarily make sense, like why you're friends with someone and why you're not. And that comes across really well here. And then at the same time, you've got Paddy Considine, who is great and like also very comical, and he turns up in his shell suit in particular. How I don't miss shell suits. But then suddenly the sort of sinister turn there, it doesn't quite come out of nowhere in that, as much as there's that one scene with Knox where Morell threatens him because he's pissed off at him having sort of ridiculed him. Mm. And I thought that scene was actually going to end differently. It felt like it was going to be like, oh, I'm just messing with you. And it doesn't. And then that sets up with like, oh, right, okay, it's not quite what I thought he was, this guy. But at the same point, it just, that last 20 minutes feels like it's dropped in from another film entirely.
Yeah.
And again, I still enjoyed it, but I am left with questions.
I don't have a lot to...
many questions.
I don't have a lot to add. This was my first watch of this film also. I really enjoyed Paddy Considine's performance up until the point that the movie pivots on that moment at the beach, which completely blindsided me.
Yeah.
And I think in retrospect, thinking about it, I suppose some of the clues are there, but it does, like you say, it does feel a little bit of a Frankenstein's monster, really, and I'm not sure where they were coming from with that character. But Paddy Considine, I mean, I will watch all day, every day, in just about anything. And I hadn't realised that this, hadn't realised that this had been his first feature role until I went back through his profile the other night on IMDb. I feel like he's an actor who's been around longer than that, but. Yeah, Morrow's an interesting character, if not an entirely believable one. But I think his sort of goofishness is so disarming initially. I think Considine does an amazing job with that, which is the reason why it feels like such a shock that the sort of pivot point happens the way it does. But yeah, I mean, to what end? And then, like you say, I think you said, Drew, the last 20 minutes of this film almost become like Ben Wheatley's kill list. It's, just not what I was expecting at all. I do kind of want to rewatch this again with the commentary on, because hopefully that might shed a bit more light on things. But also, not least of all, because apparently your young lad playing Knox, is it Ben Marshall?
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently he was so insufferable on set that at some point in the commentary, I've read that Considine basically remarks that actually that scene with him on the beach was no problem at all, threatening a child, because Considine couldn't wait to strangle him. He really did not like him at all. Which I think is a wonderfully frank and honest moment in a DVD commentary that I'd kind of like to hear firsthand.
Also might explain why Andrew Shim's returned several times in Shane Meadows' films, but he hasn't.
Yes, exactly. I suspect that's the case. He was an absolute nightmare, apparently. So there you go. But yeah, again, it's an interesting piece, and I'll never fault a film for being interesting. It just doesn't feel quite so fully formed as a film we'd be talking about in a couple of films' time, I suppose.
Yeah, I very much recommend this. I would recommend all of these bar Small Time, I guess, to some degree or another. But it's, yeah, I would like to go back and listen to the commentary as well. Okay, I had sort of intended to, but in my typical way of such things, I left all of the preparation for this to the last moment because, you know, what use is time, which I had plenty of. When I could have filled it with useless YouTube videos. So, you know. But yes, I'd like to go back and hear the commentary. Give some sort of insight into what he was thinking about. Whether it was like an overarching plan, whether it worked or not, I don't know. But it'd be interesting to know.
If nothing else, this film has given me a line of dialogue which immediately entered my top 3 film quotes of all time. So I'm happy with that.
Would you care to share what that particular line of dialogue was?
Well, I already have shared it tonight, Drew.
Was that your introduction, Craig?
Yes. That wonderful moment as he's walking past the group of guys in his purple shell suit on the way to try and ingratiate himself with Lidine, and he suddenly pulls a karate pose. I can't destroy you today, lads. I'm on very serious business. Oh, dear.
Okay. Well,